introduce my friend, Mr. Michael Exler from the East Coast Horror Group. He's back there in the back. Hey, Mike, come see me, buddy.
Check out front row.
You guys put your hands together for Mr. Michael Exler from the East Coast Horror Group.
Yeah.
You guys want to know about stuff that's happening in the horror scene? The East Coast Horror Group's going to be the way. Hey, Mike, I'm going to let you take this microphone. You can introduce everybody else. Take it away.
Thank you, sir. Welcome everybody to Days of the Dead Indianapolis. Thank you for taking your time to come and check us out. So we're going to get started with this Friday the 13th panel. So let's start out with Mr. Steve Dash.
Real Jason.
I guess we have to bring up Mr. Kane Potter. Let's bring up Larry Zerman.
Oh yeah, Larry. Oh my God, he's real Larry.
All right, Adrian will join us in a little bit, so.
Test.
Alrighty, so let's start out with a little.
Wait a minute, my goddamn mic wasn't on. Now it's on. I have to test it. You know when people say testing 1, 2? I say screw you 1, 2.
That's clever.
Shut up. Don't start.
This is going to be a 1-hour comedy show for those of you who are expecting otherwise. You might as well leave. So, let the punches start.
Sit down in the back. You just got here. You should have been there a half hour ago.
Alrighty, let's start out with Larry. How did you get involved in?
That's how he got involved.
Try it out one over there.
That one didn't work either.
Do we need him?
Hang on.
Feedback. That's good.
It's you.
I'm not giving him mine.
Larry will be back at 8 o'clock.
The light goes on and goes off. Yeah, that's good.
We can hear you without it.
Okay, how?
In the front we can.
Oh, and we have.
Yeah.
Mics don't work.
All right, so right now let's just go to everybody project. You guys can do.
Okay.
So let's go down the line. Let's start with Adrian. How did you get involved in Friday the 13th?
That can take a long time. I will project. Well, geez. How did I get involved? Well, the first one was very different from the following sequels. First one was an independent film. And there was an open call in a backstage in New York. And I and every other actor and actress between the ages of like 15 and 25 showed up at what they call cattle calls, really. I did not have a theatrical agent at the time. I had a commercial agent because most of the stuff I had done up to that point was TV, soaps, commercials, you name it. Extras, dancing, Saturday Night Fever dancer, air dancer. And so I just showed up with everybody else, number like 1,300 and something, I'm sure. And I had the right look. So I got a call back because they were looking for everyday people, and they wanted a real, someone that you could identify with. And if you look at the characters in the first one, you'll see, you know, you got the pretty girl, you got the smart girl, you've got Alice, who we're not quite sure, she's a little artistic. And the guys, the same thing, you know, you've got your gorgeous Kevin Bacon and your funny guy. And it took the summer of '79 to whittle it down to what you saw, the final group of camp counselors. And so I was chosen first, but they didn't know what character I was going to play. So I had to read all the different lines. And then they matched me up with different people to see who would be my love interest, so to speak. And so I got to read with Kevin and a couple of other wonderful young men. And then they had it down to a group of maybe 5 girls to play Alice, and we screen tested. And I think I remember very well when Sean Cunningham called me up and he said, "Well, you're my Alice." And I just was so thrilled, and he said, "Yep, you got the best dance scream I've ever heard." Cool. And we started filming the day after Labor Day, the summer of 1979. So my process was very, very different than any of the sequels because they really had no money. They actually, to begin with, they didn't even know if they had a title. They threw the title up in Variety. Friday the 13th coming May 1980, and no one called them or sued them, so they knew they had something. That's really how I became involved.
So I was 18 and an aspiring actor, and I was a theater major in college, and I had a job handing out movie tickets in LA. You know, you give out tickets. I was handing out tickets in Westwood to a screening of a movie no one had ever heard of called The Road Warrior. And on a Saturday night, and I'm standing on the corner, and these people come up to me and they go, "Excuse me, are you an actor?" And I'm like thinking, well, they must have seen me in Grease and Fairfax High. Who would ask me that? And I'm like, yeah. And then they're like, "Well, we wrote this movie and we think you'd be perfect." And that was Marty Kitrosser and Carol Watson, who were the writers of the movie, and they're like, "That guy, that pro, that show." and you know, and so I had an agent, so I gave my info, and it was Saturday, and then on Tuesday I got a call from my agent that like, "Go down and audition." And when I auditioned, I think I had auditioned like 4 times for the role, but you know, it was meant to be. It was like if someone had written, like when you see the script and you go, if someone had written, if my best friend had decided to write a part for me, it really couldn't have been more me than Shelley. And the first day of filming, Steve Miner said, "Look, don't do a character, just do you. Just be you." And so that's how you get cast in movies. You stand in 3/4.
That's all I got. Standing on a street corner. I think everybody's heard my story. I've told it a million times about doing a movie called Prison with Rennie Harlan. I was a stunt coordinator on it. 1986, the year that CJ did his movie, right? It was 86. And John Beekler was the makeup effects guy. I did a thing at the end of the movie Prison in a full body makeup, and John liked how I worked in the makeup, so when he was hired to direct Part 7 the following year, he pushed for me to play Jason. Frank Mancuso was happy with CJ's performance, so it wasn't just an easy thing. I did a screen test, and we shot some stuff. I brought a stunt guy with me, and we shot some scenes, and ultimately it was John's pushing that got me the role, because nobody had any problems with the way CJ played the character. So fortunately I had Beekler on my side, and I had done a lot of prosthetics, so it helped, I think.
You got about 20 minutes?
Good try this one.
I don't need. You hear me?
Yeah.
I had a guy to play Jason in Part 2. Because Jason went in the lake and died as a kid. And the first adult Jason, that was me. And this kid, Barrington Gillette,
Everybody know who Arrington Gillette is?
No.
Well,
I'm just kidding.
so they hired him because he said he could do his own stunts. And the first day up, they built all the prosthetics for him and everything in California. All the prosthetics for the horrible face and everything. And the first day of shooting, he was going to go through the window. They wanted to shoot the last scene in the film, but his face was exposed. So they shot that, they were going to shoot that, and he was afraid to go through the window, and they realized they had a problem, and they had to get another guy. So, fellow by the name of Cliff Cudney, who was the stunt coordinator, and I was in the Professional Stunters Association, and he said, I got a guy that'll fit the outfit, because they already filmed people running through the woods with the outfit on the walls and all that stuff. He said, I got a guy that can do it. He called me up, and he said, Steve, I'm doing this job up in Connecticut. It's a movie, it's called Jason. I need you to play this character, because the guy that's going to play it, he can't do his own stunts. I said, really? And I was only in the business about a year and a half. I said, what's the name of the movie? He said, Jason. That was the working title. I said, really? And I'm going to be Jason? He said, yeah. I said, holy shit, I got to leave, go real movie. So I got very excited. And I got in the car, and I was in New York. I had to drive up to Connecticut. It was about a 4-hour drive up to Kent, Connecticut. And I get up there, and he says, come on, and we'll meet the director, Steve Miner, and the producer, Dennis Murphy. And they just want to look at you, make sure you fit the outfit. And I said, okay. So we go into there, and Steve Miner is at the desk, and Dennis, and they're looking at me, and they look at each other, and they said, he'll do it, he looks all right. But Dennis says, you think so? So Steve said, yeah, he's all right. And I'm standing there with Cliff. So he says, you know what? He says, you know what, Cliff, take him in, go to wardrobe, see if the costume fits. So I said, okay. So we go into wardrobe, and I put the coveralls on, and the shirt, and all this and that, and the shoes don't fit. Because they shot the shoes, and they didn't fit. I said, Cliff, the shoes don't fit. He said, if the shoes don't fit, you're not going to get the job, because the shoes got to fit. They shot it. So I squeezed my feet into the shoes. And we go back in, and they look at me, and they said, wow, that's good. They said, get the bag.
What, stunt bag? You already have it.
I said, what bag? What bag? They said, well, you got a bag over you. He said, I got a bag over my head? They said, yeah, with one eye. I said, with one eye? They said, yeah. I said, He said, well, what happened is this guy's killing all these kids that are having sex. And then at the end of the movie, when they kill you, they take the bag off and they just grotesque face. I says, oh, okay, all right. I says, okay, that works. They says, you okay with it? I said, yeah. I said, give me a script. He said, you don't need a script. I said, why not? He says, you got no lines. I said, I got no lines. He said, no, you got no lines. So I'm killing kids, I got a bag over my head, I got the lead role in the movie, and I got no lines. He says, can you do the stunts? I said, I can do them. He says, you got the job. That's a good story.
So mine's not quite as interested as that, but I truly, again, second choice, to be fair to the original Jason that picked up part 6. I was running a nightclub. There was a screen very similar to the one behind us. There was a hypnotist show on stage, and they decided to do some production for the hypnotist to make a promo tape. And they wanted to put a Jason in the hypnotist show. So they said, well, let's use CJ. He's the general manager of the club. Look at the size of him. It happened to be Real Effects, was the name of the company who had shot part 4. And so the guys at Real Effects had the wardrobe from part 4. They put me in it, obviously I fit it, and came through the screen, and they kept saying, we're going to cast you for Jason. I mean, you've got this presence, this persona that we're interested in. And not even being in the industry this much, thought, yeah, whatever. However, a couple months later, I get this call to go down to Real Effects, meet with Michael Nomad, the stunt coordinator, and then they take me across the street, meet with Frank Mancuso Jr. at Paramount Studios. And I'm like, wow. And then all of a sudden, Tom McLaughlin is engaged, the director-writer. And then it's down to me and another gentleman, and actually he got the part, to be fair. And they took him down to Covington, Georgia, and the first dailies that came back, the representation wasn't quite present, is what they were looking for. So I get a call on Friday, I go meet with Frank Mancuso again, and Saturday I get a phone call, and Monday or Tuesday morning I'm down in Covington, Georgia, in the wardrobe, And to be fair, what I understand is the gentleman that did it prior to there's one scene where he got a paintball being shot in the chest, is the other gentleman, and he went on to be very, very successful, not only as a director, if I recall, but stunt coordinator and a few other things. So it worked out well for me, and it worked out well for him. And like Kane said, going into the Part 7 series, I had an opportunity. However, I always have said Kane has been a great ambassador as the Jason.
Don't do that. Don't do that.
I knew that was coming.
I told you about the comedy, right? But he has been a great ambassador because he did 4 of them. And the guy is out there every week. Now you did 4 movies. See how this goes?
Let's write it out.
Adrian, how many clips you been in? See what I'm saying?
Countless.
So I look at it going back, and
Today,
today,
have a
30 years,
bagel
see how this goes? See how 30 years later, this guy is out there working it every weekend. And you, the fans, have accepted it and embraced it, and it's now an iconic worldwide Jason Friday the 13th. The hockey mask has taken over. They don't wear bags anymore. You know, they don't drive Model Ts either. But anyway. But, you know, my story is very similar to everybody. You didn't expect it, and the unexpected happened. Here we are 30 plus years later in some cases, and 38. And it's a beautiful deal. I mean, thank you so much for your loyalty and contribution to us. About the bag or cutting my finger.
I want to know, excuse me, what about the shoes?
You like mine?
No, his.
Oh, the shoes?
The shoes.
The shoes, they didn't fit.
I know.
I
So
had
did
to
you
work,
want,
the toes were cut, the hole was
did
right.
they get you another pair
It
of
was the whole
shoes?
thing, I had it done with the eye.
They didn't bother getting you another pair of
Like it
shoes.
was cold, it was terrible.
Yeah, I'm serious.
I got paid a lot of money.
Do you think?
Pair of shoes. My favorite day on the film was Friday when I got paid.
So Adrian, did some research for this panel and I read that you were originally supposed to be a reoccurring hero in the series. Is there truth to that?
Okay, this gets complicated because it was during a time when the first one came out and it was a humongous hit, as everyone now knows. But while we were filming it, you know, we ran out of money, we didn't have any stunt people, we did our own stunts. The reason I asked you about your shoes is because my boots that they gave me were small, and they gave me a pair of socks to make them bigger, because they couldn't afford another pair of boots, so I went and got my own pair of boots. I was just wondering if you had to buy your own pair of shoes on part 2, and then I'll answer your question.
Don't get him started.
I didn't have to buy my own shoes.
All right.
I didn't buy shit.
Can you believe that? That's shocking, isn't it? He didn't give a shit about anybody else on the show.
I'm wearing a bag.
Getting back to the question, besides the shoes and the boots, I don't know if you all know, but most of you probably do. I had a stalker before there were stalking laws when the first one came out. And people back in the day, the authorities kind of figured that a woman who did horror films kind of deserved it. And that truly was the thinking back then. And so I was kind of on my own to fend for myself. I did not have an entourage because people didn't have cell phones, no entourage, no video cameras. Just think about it. It was such a different world. And I was told by my agents just to be really quiet about it because this is something you don't want to get out there. So meanwhile, I had a manager who was a commercial agent assistant who decided on me he was going to become a manager and I would be his client because I was huge, and the last thing in the world he wanted anyone on Friday the 13th to know was that I was in peril, basically. And it was a serious situation where I'd get Polaroids from the day before and the night before of what I'd been doing under my door, and the cops said, the authorities would say, well, you know what, what do you expect? You were Friday the 13th. When you're attacked or something, then come back to us. So this went on and on and off and on. So when I met with Steve Miner, I don't know what was really going down. I met with Steve and Denise, and everything that was so wonderful on the first film for me was right now spinning out of control, because I was the only one that really knew what was happening in my world, and I was starting to really kind of mentally, I was challenged by it, let's just say. And the only therapy I had was my art at the time, because my mother's reaction was, go see a priest. I mean, seriously, it was 1980 was so different, but I think back to it. We've come so far, I think. But anyway, as I recall it being told to me, it was going Alice, because I honestly, I would do anything for Friday the 13th, for Sean, for Steve. They were what put me on the map. I was so proud of my performance and the reaction I got from Alice. It really, it meant so much to me, and the last thing in the world I wanted to do was cause any kind of problems for them. So I said, whatever you need me to do, I am there for you. And I never got a script. This is the truth. I never had a script for part 2 because I save everything. Yes, people know. If you come and you'll see I have the jewelry and the photos and everything from part 1. Nothing from part 2. I was just told to show up, and it turned out to be the last day of the shoot. And I arrived in Connecticut with no script, no wardrobe fitting. Half the people from the crew had been gone. Steve says to me, okay, they put me in something that made me look pregnant for some reason, I don't know why. I was thinner then because I was really having a hard time coping. He said, okay, improv. So that whole scene with my mom on the phone, there were no script, it was improv. And everything, when we did the ice pick, the guy who does that.
Special effects.
Special effects.
Oh.
Thanks. He left, so there was just some guy who was going to do it. And it was a retractable ice pick, and they didn't try it first, so the first time it did not retract. Oh my God. So everything that was so beautiful and wonderful for me in part 1, part 2 was like a nightmare from hell. So I honestly don't know what happened, but I can only surmise that somewhere between my leaving it up to a new manager, things got quite askew. And people weren't happy with me, and it wasn't me because I was there for them, but I can only imagine that there was a lot of people that for some reason didn't think that they had to be nice to me on part 2, and I don't know why that is, but it was when I had the meeting with Denise and Steve, it was supposed to be open-ended because obviously Jason was going to become the star. Sean said, you know, I thought that was a terrible idea. He said, I don't think that, and he's the first one to admit he was obviously wrong about that. But once Paramount found out that Jason was, you know, going to be the killer, it made sense. But at the same time, I had nobody told me a thing. So I went there, I shot the thing, I left the next morning. It was all done in one night, from night. And that's really the first time I had a chance to tell that story.
Thank you.
Good question.
You both had to film underwater, sort of the transition from season to tell a little of some of the challenges that you guys had with filming underwater, and we'll get to your 13th season.
They're around. Go ahead, don't tell the story. You're fine. You're fine.
Your first.
The question is about the water scenes Ken and I both did. You know, mine was shot in Los Angeles in an Olympic-sized swimming pool, so it's all controlled. They did chain me down, very similar to what they did with Kane, to the bottom, standing on the center block. And I had safety divers, I'm sure the team did too, along with being able to hear the camera underwater because it was being shot. So you could hear the camera rolling, but for us, it was shot underwater, regulators, you hold your breath, do as much action as you can, and then when you're ready, you would signal for air and the divers would come in and pull the mask up and just stick a regulator to shoot at night. And they dropped black tarp in the pool to make it look dark. The other scene, water is shot in more of like a 5-foot pool, very large, which was a fire scene, which then they started doing all the fire on the outside of the boat, and then gelling my back up to be, set up. And then the other scene that's shot in the water is actually done at Tom McLaughlin's mom and dad's pool in the backyard, with the hockey mask being tore up with a propeller blade and a bunch of pig guts and stuff from the local, dairy down the street. And then Tom McLaughlin's job was to promise his parents he would clean the pool. So, true story, he got 3 different pools. So it was interesting and fun. We did it at night, as we did most of our shooting. So the water was cold, but at the same time, I think the performances, and both of our performances were very strong, gave that powerful outlook of being underwater.
Yeah, recently I met a guy at a convention who said that he went down to Mobile, Alabama, Bay Minette, more accurately, where we shot all the exteriors of Part 7, and somebody runs a tour about the locations where we shot Part 7 scenes. They show where the dock was, part of it's still there, where the 2 houses were, because they were only facades. And then he was saying, he said, my favorite part was seeing the lake where you shot the underwater stuff. And I was like, well, not the underwater stuff, the stuff in the water, you mean? And he said, no, the underwater stuff at the beginning of the film, where you're chained down. They showed me where you shot that, and I was like, uh-oh. Because, as CJ said, we shot everything about me being underwater in a dive pool. It was in Alabama. It was the last 2 days of principal photography. So I was already exhausted, and then I had to do 2 full days of being underwater. And because the entire outfit is foam latex, it's very buoyant. So if I couldn't get myself underwater. So they had to pull me underwater and put a cable around my ankle anchored to the bottom of the pool so that I would be upright and basically floating but held underwater. It was about 3 feet underwater for hours at a time, because they would, as CJ said, when you finished a shot, the diver would bring your regulator back, you'd breathe for a while. John Beekler could speak on a microphone outside the pool, and I could hear it perfectly underwater, and he'd tell me what the next shot was. I'd just stay under there breathing on the regulator. Then when it was ready, we'd shoot another scene, and so I was under there for like 4 hours at a time. And the guy was so disappointed that he said, I wonder how much of the rest of the tour was fake. Because if they're saying that was the underwater stuff, well, absolutely not. And, so I think a lot of that stuff was maybe manufactured for the sake of the tour. But the underwater stuff was very hard to do, especially after shooting the film for 2 months already. We did 4 weeks in LA interiors, then 4 weeks in Alabama exteriors, and it was just a very hard way to end it. I was really exhausted by the time we finished.
Thanks for that. Larry, I wanted to talk to you about filming in 3D.
Yeah.
And tell us some of the challenges there, because we've come a long way in 3D in the past 3 years.
Yeah, so they filmed in a new process. It had never been done before. It was not the red blue 3D. It's the Polaroid 3D, which is now commonplace. But back then, there was one other film that had not, a different system, but it was non-Polaroid, which was Coming At You, which had just come out, if you're old enough to remember that movie. And then we shot that. And so they were really making it up as it went along, because they were. So the first day we filmed was the scene at the store, and they had to scrap. They were like, didn't work, and they shut the production down for a week while they figured out what they had to do, and then we came back a week later and redid it. we did it again, and everything took forever. So, you know, most of these films shoot in a month, they shot like 4 weeks, right? So we shot 12 weeks on part 3, because everything, it's just like, we do a shot and it'd be 2 hours to do a new setup, which, if you're a filmmaker, I mean, you know, it was super long, really, really complex, and sometimes like,